Last time on the breakdown, we saw James Obst in another really weird spot in the 2016 main event. That guy can't get out of his own way. He plays really good, really interesting poker. We broke it all the way down, his hand against Qui Win. Click right up there if you haven't seen that, then come right on back here.
And now you're back.
Right on back here.
Well done.
Yeah, thanks.
So here's what the people had to say. This is, of course, 4 of our favorite comments.
Yeah.
Actually, another 4 of our favorite comments are on our podcast version of this You Comment, We Respond.
Right.
So you can check that out as well. But here we go. All right, so first of all, Alex Jaregui says, tough spot for Obst.
Yeah.
But you guys forgot to mention his decision on leading on the turn. I think given his stack size, he would have been much better off shoving the turn if and when one of the other players bet. In my opinion, that would have been the best play to make here.
I don't think you can reasonably expect one of the other players to bet the turn once it checks around on the flop.
Yeah.
I think his fear is that it's going to check around on the turn really frequently, and he also gets to win the pot outright a lot just by betting the turn.
Agreed completely.
Yeah.
I don't hear anything to add.
Okay.
I think that's exactly it. All right,
Yeah.
moving on. Bobby Brown, oh, I hope. Could it be?
We're famous now.
What did you do to Whitney? Sorry.
When?
I agree with you guys 95% of the time.
Cool.
Ding.
Thanks, Bobby.
But the turn raise is not a bad play at all.
Okay.
You have to expect that if
This
Obst...
is by win that we're talking about here.
Yes, yeah, that's the only raise. But yes, you have to expect that if Obst had flopped a decent queen, then he would have bet on the flop to price out some of the draws on that board. So essentially, the top of Obst's range is like tens or a draw. Win thinks he has fold equity given Obst stack size, the bubble, and the strength Win is repping. So I want to start this time.
Please.
So I don't know that it's a likelihood that Obst is going to bet top pair.
No, I think it's actually an unlikelihood.
You check to the guy who raised under the gun +1, and he's usually going to bet, right? When we're three-handed. Admittedly, some pros will lead out here on boards sort of like this, usually slightly worse, but boards sort of like this. But it's totally reasonable to check and let someone who's repping such pre-flop strength continue. They're usually going to.
Right. There's a lot of Obst really strong range that he's going to want to check shove here. It seems to make a lot of sense to check shove based on his stack size, really. And I don't really think he's going to have such a weak turn leading range. It doesn't really make sense to me.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Now, I do agree with you that Win is repping a super strong range when he raises, and it's effective. In fact, it's so effective he ends up winning the hand.
By accident.
By accident, yeah. All right, moving on. Bob Giorgio says,
Bob Giorgio.
You good poker players all over the world are missing something. There was once basic cardinal rules that went, quote, never assume intellect, aggression is more important than skill, and when the table is playing tight, play loose. There's a lot of talk these days about GTO, optimal ranges, and game theory, and Win just showed the world that the information that was tossed aside for math-based gameplay is just as valid today as it was back in 1990. We're going all the way back 26 years.
I mean, if you want to run Qui Win against the main event field 500 times and see if he comes out on top, we can go ahead and do that. I don't think that this is necessarily a true comment here. I think all this math stuff is born from something, right? It's not just made up for no reason. It actually works.
I mean, if we look at the last several main event champions, Qui Win is the only one really not doing this type of thing, right? And not just main event champions. Look at EPT titles. Look at all the different places where people win things. It's almost always, you know, range-based play at this point, and optimal and GTO stuff. It's not this feel play, which has really mostly died. It's true, Qui Win won this time.
He did.
And I think he actually did a nice job when he was heads up with Gordon Bayo.
A very nice job.
Reading his opponent, and Bayo was doing none of that. So it was sort of the ultimate expression of like robot versus human.
Yeah,
right?
it was.
And human won, and that's great. You know? Like
I'm for the humans in that war.
We're holding off the singularity as long as possible. But at the same point, I don't believe Qui Win wins the main event, even just once we get down to the final table, nearly very often. But it's a luck-based game too. Qui Win made some very reckless plays. They all just happened to work out.
They did, and I understand the sentiment. You want the field play to be the way that things are, the old ways. And there is some value to that type of play, but you have to combine it a little bit with some new school thought because you're just going to get crushed otherwise.
I will say never assume intellect, not a bad thing to keep in mind.
Sure.
Usually when you get down to the last table and a half, 2 tables of the main event final table, we should be assuming intellect. Usually it's going to be right. It just wasn't this time.
Yeah.
All right, finally, Brad Stollery says, it makes me sick to my stomach that Win binked the Emmys. It's the opposite of Bob Giorgio.
Yeah, right.
Probably,
he's a polarizing figure.
Yeah, probably the least deserving winner since Jerry Yang.
I mean, it depends on how you're going to qualify least deserving.
Right.
Because Qui Win was a joy to watch.
Oh my God.
I loved watching Qui Win play. The way that he put these pros who are used to a different type of player in weird spots was really cool and really fun. And he wasn't afraid, which was great.
Absolutely. I also will say, I think Qui Win winning, probably the best of any member of the final table for poker, right? We have a more amateur guy who plays a more fun style. It was, for a while anyway, the final table was really fun to watch until VeoBot 2.0 decided to just start limping every single hand and calling and never calling down.
Veo really messed up heads up, but that's a different discussion.
Yeah.
I guess the real question here is, how do you define deserving? If you're going by who's the best overall player since Jerry Yang, Qui Win might be the worst of the bunch. It's quite possible.
Yeah, that's probably true.
As far as his overall skill. But he's going to be probably pretty good for poker, like you said.
I mean, if we were going to do a little ranking, take like a minute and do that. Okay. I asked you this before we started. You think Jerry Yang is the least deserving main event final winner in the Moneymaker era. Is that right?
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
I think I might go with Chris Moneymaker himself.
Okay, fair enough.
But I think Jerry Yang is probably right there. I would put Qui Win above both those guys. Like Qui Win now versus those guys then. I mean,
me too.
Maybe not entirely fair to do that.
Moneymaker now would be more deserving
of
than
course.
Qui Win now. Moneymaker has definitely advanced his game a lot.
Jerry Yang might be more deserving than Qui Win now too, but
it's possible.
It is what it is.
If Darvin Moon ended up winning, I would have said him.
Right. If Darvin Moon just binks a queen or a jack, you know, he might be the main event. He usually is the main event.
And then he would be a slam dunk. Definitely Darvin Moon is the answer. But the rest of the guys are like pretty solid, good players, you know?
In fact, let's go the other way. Most deserving main event final table
I think
winners.
I might go with, it's either McKeon or Jacobson, I think.
I feel like it's got to be Jacobson.
Jacobson, he had a lot of good results on the EPT. He was always a grinder, and he was really good. So, yeah, he's deserving.
Absolutely. Anyone else? Like, I guess you're going McKeon too?
I think Duhamel has really proven himself
Duhamel.
since winning.
That's I got Duhamel too. And actually, Duhamel might even be number one. Those are my two top guys.
Right. Duhamel holds his own against 100K fields. You know?
Right.
That guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah, no one wants to mess with Jonathan.
Yeah. The bracelet, Jonathan. Yeah. All right, I guess we're done?
Yeah.
All right.